Captain Jake Morrison stood in front of the big window in his ship's bridge. He looked out at the stars and felt nervous. In all his years flying through space, he had never gotten a mission like this one. The message from Earth Command was still fresh in his mind. The Zephyrian Empire needed help. These aliens had been fighting each other for 3 years. Their civil war was getting worse every day. Ships were being destroyed. Planets were being attacked. Millions of aliens were dying. What made Jake feel strange was that the Zephyrians had asked for humans to help them. Most alien races thought humans were too young and stupid. Humans had only been traveling in space for 50 years. Other alien races had been doing it for thousands of years. But the Zephyrians wanted Jake to come and help them stop fighting each other. Jake walked over to his desk and picked up the datapad. He read the mission details again. The Zephyrian Empire covered 12 star systems. They were powerful and had good technology. But now they were split into 2 groups that hated each other. One group supported King Vorthak. They called themselves the Loyalists. They wanted to keep things the same as they had always been. The other group was led by General Krex. They were called the Separatists. They wanted to change how the Empire was run. The fighting started when the outer colonies complained about not getting enough resources. The colonies were far from the main planets. The people there were poor and angry. They said the king only cared about the rich planets near the center of the empire. Jake pressed a button on his desk. A voice came through the speaker. "Yes, Captain?" It was his second-in-command, Commander Rick Stone. "Rick, please ask Dr. Lisa Parker and Lieutenant Amy Foster to come to my office. We need to talk about our mission." "Right away, sir." Jake sat down and thought about his team. Dr. Parker knew a lot about alien minds and cultures. She had studied the Zephyrians for years. Commander Stone was good at fighting and strategy. Lieutenant Foster could speak many alien languages. She was the best translator in the human fleet. A few minutes later, the 3 officers walked into Jake's office. Dr. Parker was a small woman with gray hair and smart eyes. Commander Stone was tall and strong. Lieutenant Foster was young but very good at her job. "Sit down," Jake said. "We need to talk about what we're going to do." Dr. Parker sat forward in her chair. "Captain, I've been reading about Zephyrian society. This civil war is more complicated than it looks." "Tell me," Jake said. "The Zephyrians have a very old system of social classes. Some aliens are born high class and some are born low class. The high-class aliens get the best jobs and live on the best planets. The low-class aliens work hard jobs and live on poor planets." Commander Stone frowned. "That sounds unfair." "It is unfair," Dr. Parker said. "But the Zephyrians have done things this way for thousands of years. The Loyalists want to keep the old system. The Separatists want to change it." Lieutenant Foster opened her tablet. "I've been studying their language and culture. Both sides think they are right. Both sides think the other side wants to destroy their way of life." Jake nodded. "And both sides are tired of fighting but too proud to stop." "Exactly," Dr. Parker said. "That's why they asked for human help. They've watched how humans solve problems. They think we might have ideas that could work." Jake stood up and walked to the window again. Outside, he could see other human ships getting ready for different missions. Some were going to trade with friendly aliens. Some were exploring new planets. But Jake's mission was the most important one. "Why do you think they picked us?" Jake asked. "Humans are new to space. We don't have the best technology. We're not the strongest fighters." Dr. Parker smiled. "That's exactly why they picked us, Captain. Other alien races have been doing things the same way for so long that they can't think of new solutions. Humans are different. We're good at changing and adapting. We find new ways to solve old problems." Commander Stone looked worried. "But what if this is a trap? What if they want to capture humans and study us?" "It's possible," Jake said. "But I don't think so. The Zephyrians are honorable. They've never lied to humans before. And they really need help. Their empire is falling apart." Lieutenant Foster looked up from her tablet. "Captain, I've been reading the news from Zephyrian space. The fighting is getting worse every week. Some planets are running out of food. Trade between star systems has almost stopped. If this war continues, the whole empire might collapse." Jake sat back down. "Then we have to try to help them. Not just because it's our mission, but because it's the right thing to do." Dr. Parker nodded. "I agree. But we need to be careful. We can't just tell them to stop fighting. We need to understand why they're fighting and find a solution that both sides can accept." "How long until we reach Zephyrian space?" Jake asked. 3 days. Commander Stone said. Good. That gives us time to study their culture more. Lisa, I want you to prepare briefings on both the Loyalists and the Separatists. Rick, check our ship's defenses. Amy, practice speaking Zephyrian. We need to be ready for anything. The three officers stood up to leave. At the door, Dr. Parker turned back. Captain, there's something else you should know. No human has ever been allowed to take part in Zephyrian politics before. If we succeed, it could change how all alien races see humanity. After his officers left, Jake sat alone in his office. He thought about the responsibility on his shoulders. If he failed, the Zephyrian Empire might destroy itself. Millions of aliens would die, and other alien races would think humans were not ready for important jobs. But if he succeeded, humans would prove they belonged among the stars. They would show that being young and different could be a good thing. Jake looked out at the stars again. Somewhere out there, two groups of aliens were killing each other. Soon he would try to convince them to stop. He just hoped he was smart enough to find a way. 3 days later, Jake's ship arrived at Nexus Station. The space station was huge and shaped like a wheel. It floated in empty space between two star systems. Neither the Loyalists nor the Separatists controlled it. That made it a safe place for peace talks. Jake put on his best uniform and checked himself in the mirror. He had to look professional. Today he would meet King Vorthak for the first time. The king was the ruler of one of the most powerful alien empires in the galaxy. Dr. Parker walked into Jake's room. She was carrying a tablet with information about Zephyrian customs. Remember, Captain, she said, when you meet the king, you must bow your head but not your whole body. Looking directly at him is okay, but don't stare. And whatever you do, don't touch his scales. That's considered very rude. Jake nodded. What about General Krex? She's different. The Separatists don't follow all the old customs. You can shake her hand if she offers it, but be careful not to seem too friendly with one side or the other. Jake and his team took a small shuttle to the space station. When they arrived, they were met by two different groups of Zephyrians. The Loyalists wore fancy blue uniforms with gold decorations. The Separatists wore simple gray uniforms with red patches. A tall Zephyrian in blue stepped forward. His scales were bright green and he had large yellow eyes. Captain Morrison, he said in English that sounded strange but clear. I am Chancellor Yilex. I speak for King Vorthak. The king is waiting to meet you. A female Zephyrian in gray also stepped forward. Her scales were darker and she had scars on her face. Captain, she said, I am Commander Zaith. General Krex wants to meet you too. But the king insisted on going first. Jake could feel the tension between the two groups. Even here, in a place meant for peace, they barely looked at each other. I will meet with both leaders, Jake said carefully. I want to understand both sides of this conflict. Chancellor Yilex led Jake and his team through the station's corridors. The walls were covered with pictures showing the history of many different alien races. Jake saw humans in some of the newer pictures. It made him feel proud but also nervous. They stopped at a large door guarded by two Zephyrian soldiers. The door opened and Jake walked into a room decorated with beautiful alien art. King Vorthak sat on a chair that looked like a throne. He was the biggest Zephyrian Jake had ever seen. His scales were silver and blue and they seemed to shine with their own light. When he moved, the scales changed color slightly. Jake remembered Dr. Parker saying this showed the king's emotions. Jake bowed his head as Dr. Parker had taught him. Your Majesty, Jake said, I am Captain Jake Morrison. I am here to help end this war. The king studied Jake with large, intelligent eyes. When he spoke, his voice was deep and powerful. Captain Morrison, I have heard much about humans. You are a young race, but you have done impressive things. I hope you can help my people find peace. Jake sat in the chair the king offered him. Dr. Parker and his other officers sat nearby. Tell me about this conflict, Your Majesty. Help me understand why your people are fighting. The king's scales turned slightly darker. Jake guessed this meant sadness or anger. For 3,000 years, my people have lived in harmony. We have a system that gives everyone a place and a purpose. The high castes lead and make decisions. The middle castes work in important jobs. The low castes do the basic work that keeps our society running. Jake listened carefully. He could see that the king truly believed in his system. But some of my people have forgotten the wisdom of our ancestors. The king continued. They think they can change everything overnight. They don't understand that our traditions keep us strong. Chancellor Yilex leaned forward. Captain, the rebels want to destroy everything that makes us Zephyrian. They want the low castes to have the same rights as the high castes. This would cause chaos. Jake thought about this. On Earth, humans had fought many wars about equality and fairness. He could understand both sides. What do the separatists want exactly? Jake asked. The king's scales turned red for a moment. They want the outer colonies to rule themselves. They want low-caste aliens to have high-caste jobs. They want to share our resources equally instead of giving them to those who deserve them most. After an hour of talking, Jake thanked the king and left to meet General Krex. Commander Zyth led them to a different part of the station. This area was simpler and more practical. General Krex was waiting in a small conference room. She was smaller than the king but looked very tough. Her scales were dark brown and she had intelligent green eyes. Unlike the king, she stood up and offered to shake Jake's hand. "Captain Morrison," she said, "thank you for coming. I hope you will listen to our side with an open mind." Jake shook her hand. Her grip was firm and strong. "General, I want to understand everyone's point of view. The king told me about the traditions and the caste system. What is your perspective?" General Krex sat down across from Jake. Her expression was serious but not angry. "Captain, have you seen the outer colonies? Have you seen how the low-caste families live?" Jake shook his head. General Krex activated a hologram projector. Images appeared in the air showing alien cities and farms. "Look at this," she said. "This is Zephyr Prime, the capital planet. Beautiful cities, clean water, the best technology. The high-caste families live like kings." The image changed to show a different planet. This one looked poor and dirty. The buildings were old and broken. Aliens wearing simple clothes worked in fields with basic tools. "This is Colony 7, General Krex said. "Most of the people here are low caste. They grow food for the rich planets, but they don't have enough food for themselves. Their children are smart and could become doctors or engineers, but the caste system says they must be farmers." Jake felt uncomfortable looking at the poor conditions. It reminded him of problems Earth had faced in the past. "The king says traditions keep your society stable," Jake said. "Traditions that help everyone are good," General Krex replied. "But traditions that keep people poor and hungry are bad. We don't want to destroy Zephyrian culture. We just want fairness." Commander Zyth showed Jake more images. "These are the outer colonies that want independence. They produce valuable minerals and food, but most of the profits go to the core worlds. The colonists work hard but stay poor." Dr. Parker took notes on her tablet. She whispered to Jake, "Captain, both sides are making emotional arguments, but I think they're missing something important about Zephyrian psychology." After meeting with both sides, Jake and his team returned to their ship. They sat in the conference room to discuss what they had learned. "Both leaders seem honest," Commander Stone said, "but they see the same situation in completely different ways." Lieutenant Foster nodded. "The king thinks change will destroy their culture. General Krex thinks no change will destroy their people." Dr. Parker looked thoughtful. "There's something else, Captain. While we were talking, I noticed both sides kept mentioning honor and respect. That's very important to Zephyrians. Any solution we propose has to let both sides keep their honor." Jake stood up and walked to the window. Outside he could see Zephyrian ships from both factions patrolling the area. They stayed far apart and watched each other carefully. "There's something else we need to consider," Jake said. "Commander Stone, did you notice the weapons those ships were carrying?" "Yes, sir. Some of them looked like technology I've never seen before, more advanced than anything the Zephyrians had before this war started." Dr. Parker looked up from her notes. "That's strange. If they're fighting a civil war, where are they getting new weapons?" Jake felt a cold feeling in his stomach. "Someone else is involved in this war, someone who benefits from keeping the Zephyrians fighting each other." Lieutenant Foster checked her communications equipment. "Captain, I've been monitoring radio signals. There are ships from other alien races in this area. They're trying to hide, but I can detect them." Jake realized the situation was more complicated than anyone had told him. The Zephyrians weren't just fighting each other. Someone was helping them fight, and probably making money from selling weapons to both sides. "We need to find out who's selling weapons to both factions," Jake said, "and we need to do it without letting either side know we suspect something." Dr. Parker closed her tablet. "Captain, this changes everything. If we can prove that outsiders are keeping this war going, it might give both sides a reason to work together." Jake looked out at the Zephyrian ships again. Tomorrow he would start looking for the real enemy. Someone who hid in the shadows and made money from alien suffering. But first, He had to figure out how to get the loyalists and separatists to trust him enough to listen. Jake spent the next 2 days studying everything he could about Zephyrian law and history. Dr. Parker helped him understand how their society worked. Lieutenant Foster practiced translating complex legal terms. Commander Stone investigated the mysterious weapons that both sides were using. On the 3rd day, Jake called for a meeting with both King Vorthak and General Krex. It was the first time the two leaders would be in the same room since the war started. The meeting room on Nexus Station was neutral and simple. Jake sat at one end of a long table. King Vorthak sat on one side with Chancellor Yilex. General Krex sat on the other side with Commander Zaith. The tension in the room was so thick Jake could almost feel it. "Thank you both for coming," Jake said. "I have studied your conflict carefully. I think I understand what each side wants. Now I want to propose a solution." King Vorthak's scales shifted to a cautious yellow color. "Speak, Captain Morrison." Jake stood up and activated a hologram projector. A map of the Zephyrian Empire appeared in the air. "The main problem is the outer colonies," Jake said. "The Loyalists want to keep control of them. The Separatists want the colonies to be independent. Both sides have good reasons for what they want." General Krex leaned forward. "What do you suggest?" Jake pointed to the outer colonies on the map. "I suggest something that has never been tried before. Let humans temporarily manage the disputed colonies while you create a new system of government." The room went completely silent. Both Zephyrian leaders stared at Jake with surprise. King Vorthak's scales turned bright red. "You want aliens to rule Zephyrian territory?" "Not rule," Jake said quickly. "Manage. Think of it like hiring a neutral company to run a business while the owners decide how to reorganize it." General Krex looked interested but confused. "How would this work?" Jake sat back down. "Dr. Parker and Lieutenant Foster have created a plan. We would help the colonies govern themselves for 1 year. During that time, both sides would work together to design a new system that satisfies everyone." Chancellor Yilex shook his head. "This is impossible. Zephyrian law forbids non-Zephyrians from having authority over our people." Dr. Parker opened her tablet. "Actually, Chancellor, we found something interesting in your ancient legal codes. There is a provision for temporary guardianship during times of species-threatening crisis." She projected a section of old Zephyrian law onto the hologram. The text was in the ancient Zephyrian language, but Lieutenant Foster had translated it. "According to this law," Dr. Parker said, "a non-Zephyrian can be granted temporary authority if the species faces extinction or collapse, and if that person proves their worthiness through exceptional service." King Vorthak studied the ancient text. "I remember this law. It was written 3,000 years ago during the Plague Wars, but it has never been used." "Because your species has never needed it before," Jake said. "But this civil war threatens everything you have built. Your empire is falling apart. Trade has stopped. People are starving. If this continues, the Zephyrian species might not survive." General Krex looked thoughtful. "What exactly are you proposing, Captain?" Lieutenant Foster stood up and activated another hologram. This one showed a detailed government structure. "We propose a transitional government for the outer colonies," she said. "It would respect Zephyrian traditions while allowing more equality. High-caste Zephyrians would keep their ceremonial roles and cultural authority, but political power would be shared more fairly." Jake pointed to different parts of the plan. "The key is separation of cultural authority and political power. The high castes would still be honored and respected, but when it comes to making laws and spending money, everyone would have a voice." Commander Zaith asked, "How would this help the colonies?" "The colonies would keep more of the resources they produce," Jake explained. "They would also have the right to choose their own local leaders, but they would still be part of the Zephyrian Empire." King Vorthak's scales slowly changed from red to yellow. "This might preserve our traditions while addressing the rebels' concerns. But how do we know humans can be trusted with such responsibility?" Jake had expected this question. "Your Majesty, humans have successfully mediated conflicts between other alien species. We helped the Centauri Federation and the Rigel Republic end their border dispute. We assisted in peace negotiations between the Vegan colonies and the Wolf System traders. Those were smaller conflicts," General Krex pointed out. "True," Jake said, "but we succeeded because humans approach problems differently. We don't have thousands of years of tradition telling us how things must be done. We can find new solutions that older species might not consider." Dr. Parker added, Captain Morrison and his team would live in the colonies during the transition period. We would work directly with colonists from both factions to make sure the new system works for everyone. Chancellor Yilex looked worried. This plan would require Captain Morrison to have real authority over Zephyrian citizens. What if other alien races see this as humans taking over our empire? Commander Stone spoke for the first time. That's why we suggest starting with just one colony system as a test. If it works, you can expand the program. If it doesn't work, you can stop it and try something else. Jake stood up again. I propose we try this in the Kepler 442 system. It has 3 million colonists from both factions. If we can make peace work there, it can work anywhere. King Vorthak and General Krex looked at each other for the first time during the meeting. Jake could see they were both considering the idea. There is still the legal problem, the king said. The ancient law requires proof of worthiness. How would Captain Morrison demonstrate this? Dr. Parker smiled. The law mentions combat or exceptional service. Captain Morrison has already provided exceptional service by bringing both sides together for these negotiations, and he's willing to risk his career and possibly his life to help your people. General Krex nodded slowly. It's true. No other alien species offered to help us. Only humans were brave enough to try. Jake looked directly at both leaders. I know this is a big risk for everyone. If I fail, it could make the war worse. But if we succeed, we could create a model for peace that other species could use. Lieutenant Foster projected population and resource data for the Kepler 442 system. This system produces food and minerals that both core worlds and other colonies need. If we can make it stable and productive, it will benefit everyone. King Vorthak stood up and walked to the window. He looked out at the Zephyrian ships floating in space. General Krex, he said without turning around, if we agree to this experiment, will your forces stop attacking supply ships to the core worlds? If your forces stop attacking colony transport ships, yes, General Krex replied. The king turned back to face the room. Captain Morrison, if we agree to this plan, you would need to stay in our space for at least 1 full year. Your own people might think you have abandoned them. Jake had thought about this. Leaving human space for so long was a big sacrifice, but he believed this mission was important for all of humanity. Your Majesty, my government supports this mission. Earth Command believes that helping your people will show the galaxy that humans are ready for greater responsibilities. Dr. Parker added, and Captain Morrison won't be alone. His team will stay with him, and will maintain communication with human space. General Krex stood up. I agree to try this experiment in the Kepler 442 system, but I want guarantees that the colonists' rights will be protected. King Vorthak nodded. I also agree to the experiment, but I want guarantees that our traditions and honor will be respected. Jake felt a surge of hope. Both sides will have representatives working with my team. Every major decision will be made together. The goal is to prove that loyalists and separatists can cooperate. Chancellor Yilex looked at the ancient law again. If both leaders agree, I believe Captain Morrison has met the legal requirements for temporary guardianship. Commander Zythe checked her tablet. I'll need to get approval from the other separatist commanders, but I think they'll agree to try. Jake realized they had just achieved something amazing. Two sides that had been killing each other for 3 years were agreeing to work together. It was only a small first step, but it was progress. When can we start? Jake asked. King Vorthak and General Krex looked at each other again. This time, Jake thought he saw the beginning of mutual respect. 1 week, the king said. That will give us time to prepare our people and choose representatives. Agreed, General Krex said. And Captain Morrison, thank you for being willing to risk so much for people who aren't even your own species. As the meeting ended, Jake felt the weight of responsibility settling on his shoulders. In 1 week, he would become the first human ever to govern alien territory. If he succeeded, it would change everything. If he failed, it might start an even bigger war. But looking at the hope in both leaders' eyes, Jake believed they could make it work. The Kepler 442 system looked beautiful from space. Jake watched through his ship's window as they approached the main planet. 3 worlds orbited a yellow star. The largest planet was covered with green forests and blue oceans. 2 smaller planets were used for mining and farming. A space station floated between the planets. It was where Jake would set up his temporary government. The station was big enough to house 10,000 people, but most of it was empty now because of the war. Dr. Parker stood next to Jake, reading from her tablet. 3 million Zephyrians live in this system. About 60% support the Loyalists, 40% support the Separatists. Most of them are farmers, miners, and factory workers. Commander Stone pointed to several ships in the distance. Both factions have military ships watching us. They're staying peaceful so far, but they don't trust each other. Lieutenant Foster was monitoring radio communications. Captain, I'm hearing a lot of worried conversations. The colonists don't know what to expect from human leadership. Jake understood their concern. These aliens had never been ruled by another species before. Many of them probably thought humans would treat them badly. Amy, send a message to all the radio stations in the system, Jake said. Tell them I want to speak to every colonist tomorrow morning. What should I tell them you'll talk about? Lieutenant Foster asked. Tell them I want to explain how we're going to work together to make their lives better. The next morning, Jake stood in the space station's main communication center. Cameras would broadcast his speech to every planet and ship in the system. He wore his best uniform but tried to look friendly rather than intimidating. Dr. Parker had helped him prepare the speech in simple Zephyrian that everyone could understand. People of the Kepler 442 system, Jake began. My name is Jake Morrison. I am a human captain, and I am here to help you build a better future. Jake could see some of his staff watching nervously. This was the most important speech of his life. I know many of you are worried about having a human leader. You are right to be careful. But I want you to know that I am not here to rule you. I am here to serve you. Jake activated a hologram that showed his plan for the colony government. For the next year, we will work together to create a new system of government. Loyalists and separatists will both have voices in making decisions. Everyone will be treated fairly no matter what caste they were born into. Jake could see on his monitors that people throughout the system were gathering to watch his speech. I know that change is scary, but staying the same is also scary when the same means war and hunger and fear. We are going to try something new. If it works, your children will have a better future. If it doesn't work, you can choose a different path. After the speech, Jake spent the day meeting with leaders from both factions. The Loyalist representative was an older Zephyrian named Minister Hallex. He had dark blue scales and wore traditional robes. The Separatist representative was a younger female named Counselor Brix. She had bright green scales and wore practical work clothes. Captain Morrison, Minister Hallex said, my people are willing to try your plan, but we worry that the traditions that have kept us strong will be forgotten. Minister, traditions that help people should be kept. Jake replied. Traditions that hurt people should be changed. We will keep the good traditions and improve the bad ones. Counselor Brix leaned forward. The colonists want to see real changes quickly. They have been patient for a long time. If things don't improve soon, some of them might start fighting again. Jake nodded. I understand. That's why we're going to focus on practical improvements first. Better food distribution, fairer work schedules, improved medical care. People will see benefits within the first month. For the first few weeks, everything went smoothly. Jake worked 18 hours a day, learning about colonial administration and Zephyrian culture. Dr. Parker helped him understand local customs. Commander Stone organized security. Lieutenant Foster translated everything and helped different groups communicate. Jake made sure to treat both factions equally. When the Loyalists had a traditional ceremony, he attended and showed respect. When the Separatists had a workers' meeting, he listened to their concerns and took notes. The colonists began to trust him when they saw that he kept his promises. Food shortages were fixed by organizing better transport between the farming planet and the main colony. Medical supplies were distributed fairly instead of going only to high-caste families. Work shifts were reorganized so that everyone had reasonable hours and fair pay. But the real test came 2 months into Jake's administration. Lieutenant Foster woke Jake up early one morning with urgent news. Captain, there's a problem. The system's star is producing unusual solar flare activity. The agricultural moon is in danger. Jake jumped out of bed and rushed to the command center. Dr. Parker and Commander Stone were already there, looking at the data. How bad is it? Jake asked. Very bad, Dr. Parker said. If the solar flare hits the agricultural moon, it will destroy the atmosphere processors. 2 million Zephyrians live there, and all the food for the system is grown there. Commander Stone pointed to the tactical display. We have maybe 6 hours before the flare hits. We need to evacuate everyone and protect the critical equipment. Jake realized this was exactly the kind of crisis that could ruin everything they had worked for. If people died because of poor human leadership, Both factions would blame him and probably start fighting again. Amy, contact both Minister Halix and Councillor Brix. Tell them we need all available ships for an emergency evacuation. Sir, should I also contact King Vorthak and General Krex? Lieutenant Foster asked. Jake thought for a moment. Yes. This is bigger than just our experiment. We need every ship we can get. Within an hour, ships from both Loyalist and Separatist fleets were arriving in the system. Jake coordinated the evacuation from the space station, while Dr. Parker worked with scientists to protect the agricultural equipment. The evacuation was chaotic. 2 million aliens had to be moved in less than 6 hours. Some families got separated. Some people panicked and refused to leave their homes. Some ships broke down from being overloaded. Jake made a decision that surprised everyone. He took a small shuttle and flew to the agricultural moon himself. Captain, that's too dangerous, Commander Stone protested over the radio. There are still 10,000 people down there who won't leave. Jake replied. They're afraid and confused. Someone needs to help them. Jake landed his shuttle in the main farming city. The streets were full of Zephyrians who didn't know what to do. Some were trying to pack their belongings. Others were just standing around looking scared. Jake got out of his shuttle and used a portable speaker to address the crowd. Everyone listen to me, he called out in Zephyrian. I know you're scared. I know you don't want to leave your homes. But if you stay here, you will die. Please trust me and get on the evacuation ships. An old Zephyrian farmer approached Jake. His scales were gray with age and his eyes looked tired. Human captain, the farmer said, why do you risk your life for us? We are not your people. Jake looked at the old farmer and thought about how to answer. Around them, families were loading their possessions onto transport vehicles. Because all intelligent life is precious, Jake said. Because helping others is what makes us better than our fears and prejudices. Because if we don't help each other, who will? The old farmer studied Jake's face for a long moment. Then he turned to the crowd and spoke in a loud voice. The human captain came here to save us when he could have stayed safe on his station. If he is willing to risk his life for aliens, maybe we should trust him. The remaining colonists began boarding the evacuation ships. Jake helped elderly Zephyrians and carried children who were too scared to walk. He stayed until the very last ship left the surface. The solar flare hit the agricultural moon 3 hours later. The atmosphere processors were protected by emergency shields that Dr. Parker had organized. No one died, and the farming equipment was saved. That night, Jake received messages from throughout the system. Colonists who had been suspicious of human leadership now praised his courage. Both Loyalist and Separatist commanders thanked him for organizing the evacuation. But the most important message came from King Vorthak and General Krex together. Captain Morrison, the king's message said, you have proven that humans are worthy of our trust. You risked your life for people who were not your own species. This is the behavior of a true leader. General Krex's part of the message added, the way Loyalist and Separatist ships work together during the evacuation shows that cooperation is possible. Your example helped us remember that we are all Zephyrians. 3 months later, Commander Stone discovered something important while investigating the mysterious weapons both sides had been using. Captain, I've been tracking the source of those advanced weapons. They're coming from Corvin arms dealers. Jake knew about the Corvins. They were a species that made money by selling weapons to anyone who would pay. They had caused problems in other parts of the galaxy. How long have they been supplying both sides? Jake asked. Since the war started, Commander Stone said. They've been secretly encouraging the conflict to keep selling weapons. Lieutenant Foster had been monitoring communications. Sir, I intercepted a message. The Corvins are planning to... 1 year after Jake had arrived in the Kepler 442 system, everything had changed. The space station that had once been nearly empty was now bustling with activity. Zephyrians from both factions worked side by side in the government offices, planning projects and solving problems together. Jake stood in his office, looking at reports that made him proud. Crime in the system had dropped by 70%. Food production had increased by 40%. Most importantly, there had been no fighting between Loyalists and Separatists for 6 months. Dr. Parker knocked on his door and entered with a smile. Captain, the final report is ready, she said, handing him a tablet. The experiment has exceeded all expectations. Jake read through the data. In every measurable way, life in the Kepler 442 system had improved. People were healthier, happier, and more productive. Children from different castes were going to school together. Former enemies were working together on farming and mining projects. The most important change isn't in the numbers, Dr. Parker said. It's in how the people think about each other. They've stopped seeing loyalists and separatists. Now they just see fellow Zephyrians. Lieutenant Foster came into the office with an important message. Captain, King Vorthak and General Krex are requesting a meeting with you. They want to discuss expanding the program to other systems. Jake felt excited. If the Zephyrian leaders wanted to expand the program, it meant they truly believed it was working. Where do they want to meet? Jake asked. On the Zephyrian homeworld, Lieutenant Foster said. They're calling it a formal peace ceremony. Commander Stone looked up from his security reports. Sir, that's a big honor. Non-Zephyrians are rarely invited to the homeworld. 3 days later, Jake and his team traveled to Zephyr Prime, the capital of the Zephyrian Empire. The planet was even more beautiful than the pictures Jake had seen. Massive cities with tall, elegant towers rose from green landscapes. Flying vehicles moved through the air in organized patterns. The spaceport where they landed was enormous. Thousands of Zephyrians were gathered to watch Jake's arrival. Some held signs welcoming the human peacemaker. Others just watched with curiosity. King Vorthak and General Krex met Jake at the spaceport. It was the first time Jake had seen them standing together as allies instead of enemies. Captain Morrison, King Vorthak said, welcome to our homeworld. You have earned the right to see the heart of our empire. General Krex smiled, something Jake had rarely seen her do. Captain, the changes you helped create in Kepler 442 have inspired Zephyrians throughout the empire. Loyalists and separatists in other systems are asking for the same kind of government. They traveled to the capital city in a flying vehicle that gave Jake a view of the entire planet. He could see that even here, there were signs of the divisions that had caused the Civil War. Some areas were rich and beautiful, others were poor and neglected. We have much work to do, King Vorthak admitted. The success in Kepler 442 has shown us that our old system needed to change. But we also learned that change doesn't have to destroy what is good about our traditions. The peace ceremony was held in the Great Hall of Unity, a massive building at the center of the capital. Jake had never seen anything like it. The ceiling was so high it seemed to disappear into the clouds. The walls were covered with art showing the history of the Zephyrian people. Thousands of Zephyrians filled the hall. Jake could see representatives from every caste and every world in the empire. In the front rows sat diplomats from other alien species who had come to witness this historic event. Jake was surprised to see humans in the audience too. Admiral Lisa Carter from Earth Command had come to represent humanity. She gave Jake a proud nod when their eyes met. King Vorthak and General Krex stood together on a raised platform. Between them was a small table holding something covered by a silver cloth. Citizens of the Zephyrian Empire, King Vorthak began. Today we officially end the war that has divided our people for 3 years. The crowd erupted in cheers. Jake saw Zephyrians hugging each other and some were crying with relief. General Krex stepped forward. This peace was made possible by the courage and wisdom of Captain Jake Morrison and his team. They showed us that our differences could make us stronger instead of tearing us apart. King Vorthak gestured for Jake to join them on the platform. As Jake walked up the steps, he felt the eyes of thousands of aliens watching him. Captain Morrison, the king said, you have done something no alien has ever done before. You brought peace to a civil war that our own people could not end. Jake felt humble. Your Majesty, I couldn't have done anything without the courage of Zephyrians who chose cooperation over conflict. General Krex lifted the silver cloth from the table. Underneath was the most beautiful object Jake had ever seen. It was a crown made of a metal that seemed to glow with its own light. Precious stones from different Zephyrian worlds were embedded in its surface. This is the Crown of Unity, King Vorthak explained. It was created 3,000 years ago during the founding of our empire. It represents the highest honor our people can give. Jake stared at the crown. It was clearly ancient and incredibly valuable. Your Majesty, I am honored, but I cannot accept such a precious gift. King Vorthak smiled. Captain, this is not just a gift. It is a responsibility. The Crown of Unity grants the bearer the right to speak for all Zephyrians in matters of interspecies diplomacy. Jake felt confused. I don't understand, General Krex explained. Captain, you are now officially a prince of the Zephyrian Empire. You have the authority to negotiate treaties, declare alliances, and even command Zephyrian military forces in defense of the galaxy. Dr. Parker, who was watching from the audience, realized the implications immediately. This wasn't just an honor for Jake. It was a strategic move that would change humanity's status in the galaxy forever. No human has ever held sovereign authority over an alien species, General Krex continued. By accepting this crown, you become our official representative to the galaxy. Jake understood now. The Zephyrians weren't just thanking him for ending their war. They were making humanity their diplomatic partners. Other alien species would have to treat humans as equals instead of newcomers. Captain Morrison, King Vorthak said, will you accept the crown of unity and the responsibilities that come with it? Jake looked out at the crowd. He saw hope in thousands of alien faces. He thought about what this would mean for humanity. Earth would go from being a minor power to being the diplomatic representatives of one of the galaxy's most powerful empires. I accept, Jake said. King Vorthak placed the crown of unity on Jake's head. The moment it touched him, Jake felt a strange sensation, as if he could sense the thoughts and feelings of every Zephyrian in the galaxy. The crowd cheered louder than before. Jake saw representatives from other alien species whispering to each other in amazement. Admiral Carter stood up in the audience. On behalf of humanity, I recognize Prince Jake Morrison as the official representative of the Zephyrian Empire. Over the following weeks, representatives from 12 other alien civilizations formally recognized Jake's new status. The implications were enormous. Humanity went from being ignored by most galactic powers to being respected as diplomatic equals overnight. But Jake understood that this was just the beginning. With great power came great responsibility. 6 months later, Jake returned to Earth to establish the Terran Diplomatic Corps. He chose the best human diplomats, translators, and cultural experts to train as interspecies mediators. The crown of unity sat in a place of honor in the new headquarters. But Jake didn't wear it often. He had learned that true leadership came from service, not symbols. Dr. Parker became the head of the new Xenopsychology Institute, training humans to understand alien cultures. Commander Stone established the Interspecies Security Division, which would protect diplomatic missions throughout the galaxy. Lieutenant Foster founded the Universal Translation Service, helping different species communicate more effectively. The success in Zephyrian space led to new opportunities. The Centauri Federation asked humans to mediate a trade dispute. The Rigel Republic requested help with a colonial rebellion. The Wolf System traders wanted assistance organizing a peace conference. Each success made humanity's reputation grow. Within 2 years, human diplomats were working throughout the galaxy, earning respect for their fairness and creativity. Jake often thought about his first meeting with King Vorthak and General Krex. They had been enemies ready to destroy each other. Now they worked together to rebuild their empire and help other species solve their problems. The Zephyrian Empire had become more peaceful and prosperous than ever before. The new government system that started in Kepler 442 had spread to every world in the empire. Former loyalists and separatists served together in the unified government. But the most important change was in how different species saw each other. Humans had proven that being young and different could be advantages instead of weaknesses. They showed that fresh perspectives could solve old problems. Standing in his office on Earth, looking out at the stars, Jake reflected on how much had changed. A few years ago, humans had been alone in a vast galaxy, struggling to find their place among ancient civilizations. Now humanity was recognized as the galaxy's peacekeepers. When wars threatened to tear species apart, they called for human,